I want you to reach up and receive this as your word from the Lord.
In October 2024, a convicted sex offender made shocking claims about Pastor T.D. Jakes on live television. Jakes said Jakes tried to kiss him in the 1980s, and his lawyer demanded $6 million to keep quiet. Jakes called it extortion and filed a lawsuit. Then, things got worse. Weeks later, Jakes collapsed during a sermon and nearly died from a massive heart attack. Doctors said stress from the scandal may have triggered it. Now he's stepping down from his $400 million empire. Was his collapse really just about his heart? Thomas Dexter Jakes was born on June 9, 1957, in South Charleston, West Virginia. It was a time when racial divides and economic struggles made life especially difficult for African American families. His father, Ernest Jakes Sr., ran a janitorial business, and his mother, Odith, worked as an educator. Together, they raised 3 children, with Thomas being the youngest. Money was often tight, and opportunities for black families were limited. The neighborhood was still feeling the aftershocks of segregation, and discrimination was a daily reality. Growing up in this environment taught Thomas the value of hard work and perseverance. These lessons, learned in a household where making ends meet was never easy, later became part of the foundation of his ministry. He often looked back on those early days as the source of his empathy and resilience. Even as a child, Thomas felt drawn to preaching. He was known in school as the Bible Boy, often pretending to deliver sermons to imaginary congregations in his backyard or bedroom. His determination was remarkable because he spoke with a pronounced lisp that made him a target of teasing. Many believed he would never be able to preach effectively, but Thomas refused to let their doubts define him. He practiced constantly, studying the preachers he admired, and even using household objects as props. His passion was clear to everyone around him, and his persistence slowly turned a weakness into a strength that would carry him through his calling. At the age of 10, his world changed dramatically when his father was diagnosed with kidney failure. Medical care was limited, and the illness placed an enormous emotional and financial strain on the family. Thomas and his mother became his father's primary caregivers, while Thomas also helped with chores and cared for his siblings. There were days when he had to miss school to handle responsibilities at home. Watching his father's health decline left a deep mark on him. He often remembered that time as the moment he truly learned the fragility of life and the importance of holding a family together. In 1973, when Thomas was only 16, his father passed away. The loss was devastating, both emotionally and financially. Thomas had been working at the Union Carbide plant to help support his family, but after his father's death, he had to find other ways to provide. He and his older brother worked odd jobs, often for little pay, while Thomas continued to pursue his passion for preaching. Standing before small local congregations, he tried to bring hope and faith, even while carrying the heavy burden of being a provider at such a young age. The responsibility forced him to grow up quickly and gave him a sense of purpose that would define the rest of his life. In 1976, when he was 19, Thomas preached his first official sermon. It was a turning point that confirmed the calling he had felt since childhood. 3 years later, in 1979, he was ordained, a milestone that marked the beginning of his public ministry. He balanced his ministry with work, often speaking to small congregations in modest settings. These were humble beginnings, but they were filled with determination and faith. He had already faced poverty, the loss of his father, and the challenge of a speech impediment. Yet he refused to let any of it stop him. His personal life took a remarkable turn in 1981 when he met Sarita Ann Jameson in Beckley, West Virginia. She had been born on August 19, 1955, and was serving as the Director of Women's and Children's Affairs at her church. Her life had not been easy. She had endured the murder of her brother in front of his own children and had suffered through emotional and physical abuse in earlier relationships. Despite this painful past, Sarita was deeply moved by Thomas's passionate preaching when he visited her church. The connection between them was immediate. Described as smitten, Sarita knew she had met someone extraordinary. Their courtship lasted just 6 months before they married, beginning a partnership that would become central to one of the most influential ministries in America. Their marriage, however, was far from easy in the beginning. To support their young family, Sarita worked as a nighttime disc jockey at a Christian radio station, while Thomas focused on growing his ministry. Just 6 months after their wedding, They were involved in a terrible car accident that left Sarita with severe leg and foot injuries. Doctors doubted she would ever walk again, but Thomas cared for her tirelessly, helping her recover step by step. In time, she regained her ability to walk, and their bond grew even stronger. Sarita eventually became a leader in her own right, serving as executive director of women's ministries at the Potter's House, and later becoming a published author. Their marriage has now lasted more than 4 decades, built on faith, commitment, and shared sacrifice. At just 23 years old in 1980, Thomas founded the Temple of Faith Church in Montgomery, West Virginia. The congregation started with only 10 members in a small storefront location. It was a daring move for a young preacher with limited resources, especially since many doubted he could succeed because of his speech impediment. The early days were filled with financial struggles. He and Sarita sometimes had to collect and return bottles to buy groceries. Yet, the congregation grew, moving over the years to Smithers, South Charleston, and Cross Lanes, before finally relocating to Dallas. There it became the Potter's House, a megachurch with more than 30,000 members. What began in a tiny storefront had grown into one of the largest churches in America. During those years, Thomas's ministry was balanced with long hours of hard labor. He worked at the Union Carbide chemical plant in West Virginia to help pay the bills. His work involved handling chemicals used in welding and mining, a dangerous job that left him exhausted but determined. When the plant closed in 1982, Thomas and Sarita faced even greater hardships. He sometimes dug ditches for his brother for $100 a day when the work was available. They alternated paying utility bills, and there were times when the family had no electricity or running water, relying on candles and bottled water from relatives. Despite these struggles, Thomas never abandoned his calling. He continued to preach whenever he could, holding tightly to his faith and vision for the future. Even while facing these challenges, Thomas pursued education. Although he had dropped out of West Virginia State University years earlier to care for his father, he refused to give up on learning. In 1985, he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies from Friends International Christian University. In 1990, he completed a Master of Arts in Biblical Studies, and in 1995, he earned a Doctor of Ministry. He managed these degrees through correspondence and distance learning while leading his growing church, working odd jobs, and raising a family. His academic path was not traditional, and some critics questioned the reputation of the institution, calling it a diploma mill. In 1982, at only 25 years old, T.D. Jakes became the pastor of Greater Emmanuel Temple of Faith in Smithers, West Virginia. It was a small storefront church with just 10 members, a number so tiny it could have fit inside a single car. At first glance, it was an unremarkable beginning, but Jakes's journey was far from ordinary. He had already endured painful challenges. His father had passed away in 1973 after a long illness, and Jakes had worked at the Union Carbide plant to support his family until it closed, leaving him without a job and pushing him into full-time ministry. The early years were marked by financial struggle. He and his wife, Sarita, worked tirelessly to keep the ministry alive. Sarita even took a nighttime job as a DJ at a Christian radio station so they could make ends meet. From the start, Jakes stood out. As a boy, he had preached to imaginary congregations, earning the nickname Bible Boy. He had been preaching since 1976, but now the responsibility was real. The church's location in a coal mining town was no accident. Jakes believed there was potential in a place most people overlook. In 1983, just a year after becoming pastor, he held his first conference called Back to the Bible. 80 people came, a huge leap from the original 10 members. It was an early sign of his ability to inspire and draw people in despite limited resources. That same year, he launched a radio ministry, also called Back to the Bible. The church could barely afford the $45 fee for a 30-minute slot, but Jakes understood the power of media. His messages, filled with empathy and practical wisdom, quickly connected with listeners. The program turned him into a local celebrity and brought new people into the congregation. For many living in remote coal mining towns, his voice over the radio became a lifeline. By the end of 1983, his conference attendance had grown to 80 participants, showing how quickly his influence was spreading. In 1987, when he was only 30, Jakes was ordained into the bishopric by Dr. Quander L. Wilson, the presiding bishop of Greater Emmanuel Churches. The ceremony was held at the Civic Center in Charleston, West Virginia, and it marked a major turning point. Becoming a bishop at such a young age was rare. The title gave him authority to oversee more than his local congregation, opening doors for new opportunities and recognition. It was clear that his leadership and vision had already made an impact. By 1988, Jakes realized he needed broader support to expand further. That year, he joined the Higher Ground Always Abounding Assemblies, a Pentecostal denomination founded by Bishop Sherman Watkins in Columbus, Ohio. Watkins saw his talent and became both a mentor and father figure in the ministry. The assemblies had begun in 1970 with just 11 members, but had grown steadily, and its mission to take ordinary people and connect them with an extraordinary Savior matched Jakes' own vision perfectly. This connection gave him credibility and resources he would need as his ministry continued to grow. In 1990, Jakes moved his church from Smithers to South Charleston, West Virginia. By then, his congregation had grown to about 100 members. After the move, the number quickly doubled and then tripled, reaching 300. He had a gift for connecting with people struggling with addiction, poverty, and broken families. His church became a refuge for anyone looking for hope. In 1993, he relocated again, this time to Cross Lanes, a more affluent suburb. It was a bold move for a black pastor at the time, but Jakes' message spoke across racial and social boundaries. Within a short period, the congregation grew to over 1,100 members, with an extraordinary 40% of them Caucasian, something rarely seen in Pentecostal churches. That same year, Jakes stepped into the world of television. In 1993, his weekly program, The Potter's Touch, aired on the Trinity Broadcasting Network. The reach was immediate and astonishing. Within a year, his sermons were being watched by millions, and his name became known across the country. By 1996, he had relocated his family and ministry to Dallas, Texas, to handle the overwhelming growth. His broadcasts expanded to more than 100 countries and soon became a staple of religious television. In 1994, he also partnered with Black Entertainment Television, reaching an even wider African-American audience. Unlike reruns of his TBN sermons, these programs were designed to address the specific cultural and spiritual needs of the community. They touched on self-worth, overcoming adversity, and economic empowerment. The partnership quickly made Jakes a household name in African-American homes, with millions tuning in from the United States, the Caribbean, Africa, and parts of Europe. That same year, he launched the Manpower Conference in Detroit, Michigan. The event drew thousands of men, offering them a safe space to discuss challenges such as fatherhood, marriage, and addiction. It grew into one of the most impactful men's conferences in the country. By 2011, over 9,000 men were attending a single event in Dallas, with more than 150,000 lives changed since its beginning. In 1995, Jakes founded TDJ Enterprises, expanding his ministry into publishing, film, music, and digital media. The company would eventually generate nearly $400 million in revenue, selling over 20 million copies of his books, and producing hit films like Woman, Thou Art Loosed in 2004, Jumping the Broom in 2011, and Heaven is for Real in 2014. The company even funded a $150 million real estate development called Capella Park in Dallas, and established Clay Academy, a charter school, showing that Jakes' vision reached beyond the pulpit. From 1995 to 1996, he hosted a nationally syndicated program called Get Ready, which aired on both TBN and BET and reached millions. It blended preaching with live call-ins, music, and real conversations about pressing issues like addiction, domestic violence, and economic hardship. In 1996, Jakes made his boldest move yet. He relocated from West Virginia to Dallas with 50 church employees and their families to found the Potter's House. The new campus sat on 34 acres and featured a 5,000-seat auditorium. At the very first service, more than 2,000 people showed up. The response was overwhelming, and by August 2000, the church had built a new 191,000 square foot sanctuary, seating over 7,600 people. Remarkably, The $45 million project was paid off in just 4 years. By the early 2000s, the Potter's House had more than 30,000 members, making it one of the largest and most influential churches in America. Its reach extended far beyond Dallas, with satellite campuses in Fort Worth, Frisco, Denver, and Los Angeles. On any given Sunday, more than 16,000 people attended services in person, with up to 70,000 watching online. The congregation was unusually diverse, with 45% male membership and a racial mix that included people from all walks of life. In September 2005, Hurricane Katrina tore through the Gulf Coast, leaving behind one of the worst humanitarian crises in modern American history. More than 1,333 people died, and millions were left homeless. The city of New Orleans was hit especially hard when its levees failed, and the flooding consumed entire neighborhoods. During this chaos, Bishop T.D. Jakes became a major voice of hope. On September 5, 2005, he stood beside President George W. Bush in Baker, Louisiana, as the president publicly praised him for inspiring church families to adopt displaced survivors. Bush called Jakes a leader of what he described as the armies of compassion. At the same time, Jakes pressed the president to take poverty more seriously, showing that he was willing to use his influence to push for real change. This moment marked Jakes as more than a preacher. He had become an advisor with rare access to national power, able to mobilize volunteers and resources when the country needed it most. Only a few years later, on January 20th, 2009, Jakes played another historic role. That morning, as Barack Obama prepared to take the oath as the first African-American president of the United States, Jakes joined other pastors at a private prayer service at St. John's Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C. This tradition dated back to 1933. Jakes stood alongside the church's rector, Luis Leon, and evangelical pastor Joel Hunter as they prayed for the new president and the nation. His presence symbolized the strength and recognition of African-American religious leadership at the highest level of government. Later in the day, Rick Warren delivered the invocation at the public swearing-in, but Jakes's early morning prayer carried its own weight. While some criticized the choice of certain pastors involved in the ceremony, Jakes chose to focus on unity and hope, further cementing his place as a national faith leader, trusted in the most significant moments. Jakes was not only a spiritual leader, but also someone deeply committed to solving social and economic problems. In 1998, he founded the Metroplex Economic Development Corporation, a nonprofit created to close gaps in opportunity for urban communities. The group organized home ownership conferences and youth mentorship programs, helping thousands of families take steps toward financial stability. Along with this, Jakes created the Clay Academy in the Capella Park community, a school designed to give children both academic programs and meaningful extracurricular activities. His vision was clear. He wanted to break cycles of poverty while staying grounded in faith-based values. These efforts built stronger neighborhoods, created jobs, and gave hope to families who often felt forgotten. At the same time, Jakes reached beyond the church into the media world. In 2009, he partnered with Dr. Phil McGraw, Jay McGraw, and CBS Television Distribution to create a syndicated talk show. The idea was to combine his inspirational style with the wide reach of daytime TV. The project had major backing, but was canceled before it ever aired because of economic challenges and changing priorities in the television industry. For Jakes, it was a clear reminder of how difficult it is for a pastor to succeed in mainstream entertainment, no matter how well known. Not discouraged, Jakes tried again in 2015. The T.D. Jakes talk show was tested in 4 cities: Atlanta, Cleveland, Dallas, and Minneapolis, and received positive feedback. By September 12, 2016, it had expanded to more than 50 markets across the country. The show offered a mix of faith-based encouragement, human interest stories, celebrity interviews, and self-help advice. But even with strong content, it struggled to stand out in the crowded daytime television market. On March 15, 2017, Tegna announced it would cancel the show after 1 season because of low ratings and limited clearances. Still, Jakes' voice found a home on the Oprah Winfrey Network, where his inspirational content continued to reach viewers. While his television ventures showed the challenges of expanding into new arenas, Jakes never lost sight of his ministry and family. He and his wife Sarita raised 5 children: Sarah, Cora, Jermaine, Thomas Jr., and Jamar. All 5 became deeply involved in ministry, which is rare in megachurch families. Sarah and Cora emerged as well-known preachers and authors, while their brothers worked in church operations, media, and outreach. Together, they helped the Potter's House grow into a ministry serving more than 30,000 members with more than 50 programs, from literacy classes to homeless outreach and global humanitarian work. The strength of the Jakes family showed how faith, resilience, and unity can carry forward a legacy across generations. In early 2024, Pastor T.D. Jakes found himself linked to a federal lawsuit against music mogul Sean "Diddy" Combs. The lawsuit, filed by producer Rodney "Lil Rod" Jones, accused Combs of sexual harassment, drug use, and sex trafficking. Jakes was not a defendant, but his name appeared once in the filing. Jones claimed that Combs wanted to use his relationship with Jakes to soften his public image after Cassie Ventura accused him of rape and abuse. That single mention was enough to spark headlines, raise questions, and fuel online debate. Jakes himself was never accused of wrongdoing, yet the connection showed how even a small link to a major scandal could create real challenges for a public figure. Later that year, Jakes faced even more serious controversy. In October 2024, Dwayne Youngblood, a pastor from Pennsylvania and a convicted sex offender, appeared on the YouTube talk show Larry Reed Live. He claimed that Jakes tried to kiss him and embraced him without consent in the 1980s, when he was 18 or 19 years old. Youngblood had previously been convicted in 2008 for sexual assault of a minor, and again in 2014 for corruption of minors. Around the same time as the interview, his attorney sent Jakes a letter demanding $6 million to avoid a lawsuit. Jakes' legal team strongly denied the allegations, calling them a campaign of lies, and pointing to Youngblood's criminal past as evidence of his lack of credibility. The claims quickly gained attention online, with many questioning Youngblood's motives. On November 25, 2024, Jakes made a bold move. He filed a defamation lawsuit in federal court against Youngblood and unnamed others. The lawsuit accused them of orchestrating a calculated effort to damage his reputation and extort him for millions. Jakes' lawyers argued that the allegations had taken a deep toll on him physically, emotionally, and spiritually, even leading to a medical emergency while he was preaching. The filing stated the accusations were completely false and motivated by greed, aiming to profit from Jakes' name and influence. For Jakes, the lawsuit was a way to push back and protect both his reputation and his ministry. Just one day earlier, on November 24, 2024, Jakes had endured a terrifying health scare. While delivering a sermon at the Potter's House of Dallas, the 67-year-old suddenly began shaking and lowered his microphone. He slumped over on his stool as staff and church members rushed to his aid. The service was being live-streamed, and the footage quickly spread worldwide, showing the chaos and urgency of the moment. What was first described as a health incident turned out to be a massive heart attack. Doctors later told Jakes he was only 5 minutes away from death when he arrived at the hospital. If he had been delayed, he would not have survived. Medical tests revealed that Jakes had been preaching with only half of his heart functioning. A clot had blocked blood flow to the right side, leaving it completely cut off. The adrenaline of preaching had masked the severity of his condition until he sat down. He later explained that the moment he lowered his microphone, the reality of his body shutting down became clear. Doctors confirmed that this type of blockage is often fatal without immediate treatment. Jakes said that as he collapsed, he felt as though he drifted into a calm, white, cloud-like space, unaware of the chaos around him. He described it as a peaceful, near-death experience that changed his perspective on life and faith. What made the episode even more alarming was the absence of classic symptoms. He never felt sharp chest pain or numbness. Instead, he only felt as if he was drifting off to sleep. Looking back, He called it a silent heart attack, one that gave almost no warning but nearly ended his life. The close call shaped Jakes' next major decision. On April 27, 2025, he stood before a congregation of tens of thousands at the Potter's house and announced a historic transition. He declared that his daughter, Sarah Jakes Roberts, and her husband, Toure Roberts, would become the new senior pastors later that year. The church, founded by Jakes in 1996, had grown to over 30,000 members and a vast digital following. Jakes explained that after his health scare, he could not risk leaving his congregation without a leader if something happened to him. He called the moment a rebirth, not a departure, promising to continue preaching and guiding the church as chairman of the board and spiritual overseer. Jakes made it clear he was not stepping away from ministry. He said he would expand his reach through new projects, including an upcoming podcast series with iHeart Podcasts called My Next Chapter. His goal, he explained, was to keep influencing lives globally while ensuring his church remained strong under new leadership. He told his congregation, "This moment isn't an ending, it's an expansion."